friends, welcome to a very loud event space on the eve of the 2015 Los Angeles International Auto Show. And what you see behind me is red, but you probably think it is an all-new car from Sant'Agata Bolognese, when in actuality it is not an all-new car from Sant'Agata Bolognese. What it is an all-new business case from Sant'Agata Bolognese. I know I am confused too. When I rolled in here, I thought I was going to see a two-wheel drive Lamborghini. It turns out I got way more than that. So you and I need to unpack all of this stuff. So let's start with the technical bits and we'll go over there because that's where they all are. Okay, so what does it mean when you say LP-580-2? Well, the big difference is there was a Huracan that is a -4 or Quattro, and that is all-wheel drive. This is Due, two-wheel drive. Now I know we're all very excited about two-wheel drive. I'm very excited about two-wheel drive, and you're probably thinking, well, if there's two-wheel drive, well, maybe there'll be a manual transmission. Sadly, there's not the manual transmission. As much as I would love to leave a question at the end of this episode, would you like to see this with a manual transmission? I'm not going to, because the reality is you and I want to see this with a manual transmission, but the people who actually buy the cars, it's like 3 people that would buy these things with manual transmissions, and that's just the sad state of affairs of people buying manual transmissions. But anyway, let's press on to some of the other changes, because it's not just lopping off the all-wheel drive system. There are some changes in the engine as well as some other bits about the car. The biggest ones are in the engine. So the four-wheel drive car is 610 horsepower. This one is a 580 horsepower 10-cylinder engine. Great, right? Well, the torque is about 400 pounds-feet of torque. Well, 75% of it comes in at a very low 1,000 RPM. Let's put this into perspective for a minute. We just drove that C63S over at Ascari. Peak torque on that one comes in at a low 1,350 RPM. This is at 1,000, 75% of that 400. That's crazy low. I mean, to the point where I'm very excited to drive it. Now, that's the power, but there's something else that they changed here. I was talking with Maurizio, the chief engineer of Lamborghini, before he left this evening. And what they're doing now with the Lamborghini, I never thought I'd see the day this happen, they're doing cylinder deactivation. It's not just this one, they're doing it on the 610 horsepower car as well. And the logic, you would think, with these is to increase the efficiency, and yes, it is to increase the efficiency, but most of the time the idea is to get around gas taxes, whether they be gas guzzler taxes like in the US, or CO2 taxes like in Europe, or displacement taxes like China. Well, Maurizio was telling me that that wasn't the logic, because even with lopping off 5 of the cylinders when the car is not under load, like on the highway, it doesn't really change the fuel economy that much or the tailpipe emissions that much to get it into a different tax band. So still in the US, you would have a gas guzzler tax, and in China, you would have a displacement tax. But what's interesting, Lamborghini, they have a kind of like a get-out-of-jail-free card. So in Europe, in the EU, basically, any manufacturer that's below 10,000 units in volume, they get an exemption on the CO2 tax. I guess the logic is they want to spur on sales where these cars are actually made. Anyway, I digress. There are some other changes here. Notice the wheels are different. Notice the front end is different, but wait, there's more. Notice the brakes are different. So in the 610 horsepower car, what was so exciting about that car is that car was fitted with carbon ceramic brakes as standard. It's one of the first in this segment that had carbon ceramic brakes fitted as standard. Now the Ferrari California T, that has carbon ceramic brakes fitted as standard, and some upper-end Porsche models do as well. But here, they've gone to a steel rotor, and notice what's cool about this? They've actually scalloped the rotor, so yeah, you get lesser brakes, but they actually look a little cooler. Anyway, I digress again. Okay, so that's all the tech bits. Now we gotta put that aside. I promised you a different business case, and honestly, when I rolled in here, I expected to see and hear about some technical bits about a car and press on to the next event. But really, what was presented was a different business case, which this is like the signpost of. Number one, and I didn't expect to see this part of it, they brought out a PowerPoint that showed the volumes in this segment and basically broke it out into a sub $200,000 car $200,000 to $300,000 car, and then above $300,000. And this is interesting. So in the above 300 segment, so think of that as the Aventador, that is about a 2,600 unit run per year, and that's everything, like Ferrari, Lamborghini, everybody. And then when you go into the 200 to 300, so the all-wheel drive Huracan and some other Ferraris, you're looking at about 7,000 units a year. But the logic for bringing this car out is the sub $200,000 segment. It's kind of funny to talk about when you think about a Porsche GT3 or a Porsche 911 Turbo as like the inexpensive car in these segments, but that's what it's competing against, 20,000 units a year. So that is the logic of bringing out a car like this. Okay, so that's the business case for this car, but there's other business case changes for Lamborghini. Okay, so there were two other things that they talked about tonight. Number one was about another new car coming up, and number two was about the past. So Stefan Winkelmann basically confirmed an SUV, the Urus. And what was interesting about that discussion, you guys have kind of seen the concept study of that already, but what was interesting about that, he actually gave some very specific numbers about the change in the company size. Like they are literally going to double the size of the factory, meaning in square footage in Sant'Agata Bolognese. So that's the future, but what about the past? So you know how Ferrari has a department that does nothing but like certify classic cars, Mercedes has one, Jaguar has one. Well, finally Lamborghini, after 52 years of being in business, they're finally gonna have one, and they got a cool name. It's called Polo Storico, or Polo Storico. Whatever it is, it's a cool name, and the whole idea is to classify and certify classic Lamborghinis. Isn't it funny that they say polo, and I think polo, I think a horse. Doesn't Sant'Agata Bolognese have a neighbor that also has a horse? Anyway, I digress. So with that, that is about all we have for the Lamborghini. You can hear all the stuff going on. These guys want to go home. I want to go home. So the event is over. But starting tomorrow, we're going to come to you guys with a number of episodes from the show floor. So make sure you tune in and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, MotoManTV, all one word. But of course, I have to leave you guys with one question. And the question is this. Now, we've seen the Lamborghini Huracan 610 with the all-wheel drive. We've seen now a Roadster that's coming out, and then here's a two-wheel drive version. What other derivation of Huracan would you want to see? Could it be maybe a more street-legal GT3 model, because they're already doing that in their own single race series, or I don't know, whatever else you come up with. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Remember to download our fancy new application from the Apple iTunes Store or Google Play. And number two, make sure to join us for the latest picks and updates from the LA Auto Show tomorrow, Wednesday the 18th, and Thursday the 19th from Los Angeles, California.